Culture Uncut. This is Culture Uncut. This is Culture Uncut. I am your host, Jason Spears, and Colt fans, we've got a lot to talk about. This is Culture Uncut. I'm your host, Jason Spears. It is Wednesday, March 26th, the year of our Lord, 2025. And so there's not been a lot of Colts news recently, and so I thought what I would do is do kind of a deep dive on the free agents that are still available at positions that I think need more competition. So I'll give you the position groups that I looked at. I went and looked at offensive guard because I like our tackles. I think we have 4 really solid tackles, 3 really solid tackles. Freeland needs to improve, but I really would like to leave those guys alone. I know their plan right now is to move Goncalves to guard, but I would like to keep him as like the swing tackle if possible, and then replace Braden next year with him that way, and then sign a guard and draft a guard. So there's guards that I went and looked at, and there's some decent ones available. And then I looked at edge, because we definitely need to add some edge, but there's not a lot available. I looked at linebacker, and I looked at safety. So mostly on defense. I did look at tight end. There is nothing available. Gerald Everett and Mo Alley Cox are like I don't even know if I didn't even look at Mo Alley Cox. He might have signed already, for all I know. But there's really nothing available unless you trade for the kid from Vegas, which I know a lot of you guys want to do. I don't know what that would cost. I'd be willing to do it if it doesn't cost much. Otherwise, I would just double dip at tight end. I mean, because right now that position group is the worst in the NFL. There is no argument to it. It is by far the worst in the NFL. I don't know if we have a single NFL level tight end on the roster because none of them have proven anything. I think Ogletree is solid, but I mean average at best. And Woods can't stay on the field. Mallory, I mean, they drafted him, but they never play him. And so, I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. And then they've got a couple other guys that are just kind of back-end roster guys. So, tight end's a problem, a major problem. So, that's not going to be on this list. Like I said, Gerald Everett was like the best guy they had left, and he had like 1 catch for 13 yards last year. So maybe you sign him to like a 1-year, $1 million deal or whatever the cheapest deal you can give him is. But man, there is not much out there. So to me, the most glaring part of our team right now is the loss of Will Fries. And so I went and looked at the guards that are available and the guys that I would look at. So this doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be starters. Some of these guys could be competition for somebody we take in the draft or whoever is on the roster. So the first guy I came up with was Will Hernandez. And he had an injury last year. He did not play the entire year. But Will Hernandez is an above-average run-blocking guard and way above average in pass protection. He was ranked 22nd out of 135 as far as guards go. He only played 280 last year, 280 snaps, which isn't much. But if I could pick one guy to put there, that would probably be the guy because he's above average in every way. And I think you could get him for a relatively cheap deal because he's coming off an injury. So maybe you sign him to a 2-year deal or whatever with an option for a third. I don't know. He's only 29, so he's still got some years left in him. Then there's a guy like Dalton Risner. And these guys have played the majority of the snaps in their career at right guard. There's a guy like Dalton Risner. He played 537 snaps at right guard last year. He's really good in pass pro, 13th out of 135, but below average in the running game, 95th out of 135. So it depends on what you want. If you're trying to take care of the quarterback, Risner would be a solid guy, and I think playing next to well, I don't know, man. I don't know how Risner would feel. He's 29 though, so he's still got some time. I don't think he would be, because it's kind of like his good and bad kind of even each other out. So I think he'd be an average guy to put there. Certainly competition, wouldn't cost a lot. He's pretty durable from what I've seen. I mean, he played a lot of snaps last year. So that's a guy I'd look at. And then an outside the box guy that maybe nobody talks about is Tristan Colon from Arizona, 27 years old. Played 386 snaps last year, 372 at right guard. He was ranked 29th out of 135 guards. He was not great he was 50 out of 135 with a 65.9 pass pro grade and 41 out of 135 with a 68.5 run blocking grade. So he'd be a solid guy. And again, I don't think he would be like a buy low candidate, because I don't think a lot of people are looking at him. Certainly somebody that I would consider bringing in. Any of those three guys, I think, could be starting material for the Colts in 2025. I think you could get, any one of them for probably 2 years. Hernandez is going to be more. Risner, I think you could get for fairly cheap, and Cologne might be a little more than what you would expect. But I think any of those guys would be doable signings, and it would allow the Colts to have a plan at guard that doesn't involve moving a bunch of guys around, and allowing Concalves to continue to kind of, learn the right tackle position and be prepared to take over when Braden leaves next year. And again, you draft a guard in the draft, and it allows you not to throw him out there right away unless he earns it. So, and then you have depth at both guard positions with a veteran like Hernandez or Risner or Cologne to play whatever position needs to be played if something, God forbid, were to happen to Quentin. So those are the three main guys that I looked at. The other two options, one is very old, which is Brandon Scherf. He's 33, still really good in pass pro, but very poor run blocking. Maybe you get him for a year again, and just hope that he doesn't fall off a cliff, or you get him for a year. But I'm not overpaying for him. I'm just not doing it because he's 33 years old and he's on the downside. So maybe you bring him in for competition for the younger player. And I don't even know if this guy is even going to play. He might retire. I don't know. I haven't heard. The other guy is, and I know people have talked about him, is Dylan Raduns. He should be cheap because he's not very good. He's below average in pretty much every way, so he would be more of a backup kind of player. Just not very good in any one facet of blocking. So I think that would be more of a depth, kind of situation. I mean, I don't think you'd want to be in any way, shape, or form having this guy start a bunch of games. So I'm not a huge guy. I'm not a huge Dylan Raduns guy, but maybe for depth, and if you can get him for cheap, maybe that's where you go. But for real, offensive guard is like a spot I really think they could fill with a good player that doesn't break the bank. I really hope that they let, because I think the plan is to go with Bordolini and Matt at there's two guys next to each other, and I would rather, because I think Matt is better at tackle, and I would just rather have them go get a guy that's proven and then leave Matt alone, let him play right tackle next year and keep playing right tackle, um, and then draft a guard in the draft. It just sets up better for the Colts next year. And then hopefully Freeland can grow into being that swing tackle that you need for 2026. But that's down the line. So that was the one I really focused on. I looked at edge, not a lot there either. Von Miller, who probably is the best available edge guy, his numbers are really good. He's still elite as a pass rusher, but I think he's probably, I think he's 36, so I'm guessing he's probably going to want to go to like the Eagles or a team that's got a legitimate chance of winning the Super Bowl, and barring a miracle, I don't see that happening this year with the Colts. So I didn't really consider him, but I wanted to mention him because he's obviously still playing at a very high level. A guy I know the Colts have spoken to, Zadarius Smith. He's got a 74.7 overall PFF grade, 33 out of 211 edges, 76.5 pass rush PFF grade, which is 21st out of 211, and 62.8 run defense, which is 85th out of 211. He is probably the best edge defender left, and that is the guy the Colts have talked to, and I don't know if they can afford him. I don't know what he's looking for, but he's still playing at a very high level for a guy that's 32 years old. So that's probably out of the edges, that would be the guy that I would focus on, and that's the guy they're talking to. But again, there's a lot of teams that are interested in him, so you have to make it work. And you're not gonna. I don't want anybody overpaying for a 32-year-old player. So last guy is an interesting player I've watched a little bit of. Okay, and he's outside the box and not a normal Colt type player. His name is Dennis Gardick. He's 30 years old. He reminds me a lot of, I shouldn't say this. His motor reminds me a lot of Grant Stewart, and also his hair. Yes, he's a white guy, but he plays really hard. I think he could help on special teams. He's decent in pass rush, 68.2 pass rush grade, 67.8 run defense grade. He's not a bad player. I think he'd be a solid depth signing. He's only 30 years old. Again, a 72 overall. You can move him around. You can play. He can cover. He's got interceptions. You can drop him. You can bring him. You can do all kinds of stuff with this guy. It'd be interesting to see how Anarumo would use him, but I think he'd be a great guy for the locker room just from what I've seen, and he's a good player. Played for Arizona last year. I know a lot of you guys want Kaiser White. I just don't see the fit. He's horrendous in really every way except run defense. He's basically a crappier EJ Speed, from what I've seen from Kaiser White. So I'm not a big Kaiser White at linebacker guy. I would rather go draft. He can't cover at all, and I don't know if you're going to use him at edge. He's not great. He's not really great at that either. Blitzing, he's not great at. He's really just good at run defense, and that's essentially what EJ Speed was good at. So we don't need Kaiser White. And then that's how I came across Dennis Gardick, because he was all over the field in the tape that I watched. So I like him a lot. I'm sure a lot of people would probably not like him because he's small, doesn't have long arms. He's not the prototypical edge. He's not the prototypical Colt in terms of what Chris Ballard likes, so it's probably a long shot. But I like football players that play hard, love playing, have fun, and give it everything they got every time they're out there, and they are productive, and this guy is. So that's why I put him on here. I don't think the Colts will consider him, but I just wanted to give him some props because I really love the way that kid plays. And hopefully if he doesn't sign here, hopefully he gets a chance to play somewhere else, because I really like a lot of things about him. Linebacker, I went through the ringer with the linebacker. I know why everybody likes White. I'm not a fan. He simply looks like EJ Speed to me. Um, the only guy that I thought that would be a good pickup it's still playing at a high level is once again a guy that's old. He's 33 years old, but he had a great year last year, and that's Eric Kendricks. He had a 75.2, and before I get it back into PFF stuff, it's not the end all be all, but it's one of the tools that you use to evaluate a player. And so that's why I'm telling you this. I don't agree with all of their ratings. I remember they gave Marlon Mack like a one of the worst ratings after he ran for like 180 yards in a game against Houston. So like, and the guy that the running back for the Houston had a higher PFF rating for the game, and he ran like 18 times for 30 yards. So I don't always agree with the way they evaluate players. I'm just giving you this as a tool of evaluation that you can look at. You can take it or leave it. So Eric Kendricks, 75.2, 27 out of 189 overall. So top 30 linebacker. 78.5 and 12th out of 189. And what is that in coverage? And then in run defense, he was 78.3, which is 33rd out of 189. So I don't know. Kendricks would be a guy maybe I'd bring in for a year just to allow Carlisle and whoever we draft to compete with him. Then I looked at safety because I think we need a legit third safety to kind of be able to take some of the pressure off the two starters, and barring injury, hopefully they won't see the field too much, but if there is an injury, I want somebody that can fill in. Now, the first guy I just picked because of the familiarity with the defense. That guy's Von Bell. He knows the defense. He's average in coverage, below average in run defense. I just think him knowing the defense would help. So he'd be like a good depth guy to have. The guy that I would love to get, and I don't know if he's signed because I haven't checked today, and these things just pop off. But Quadre Diggs, he's overall. I mean, forget the grades. Overall, he's above average in run defense, and he's above average in pass defense. That's essentially, the type of player that I want. A guy that can really kind of fill in either spot if need be. So Diggs would be a guy that I would look at as a third safety. But again, these are players that are going to want to start. So you're going to want to give, these guys the opportunity. And I don't know if Diggs is certainly not beating out Bynum. Maybe he could beat out Cross, but I doubt it. You just want to have the best players on the field. I'm still on the Julian Blackmon, even though I think he might have signed. I know he was visiting Carolina yesterday, and I haven't checked up on it, but I'm still on the Julian Blackmon for the third safety, because he can play both. He can play free. He's good in coverage. His coverage grade last year was really, really high. I think it was like 75 or something like that, or maybe it was 73. He was really good in coverage, and he was terrible in run defense because his shoulder was jacked up. But if you're using him as a third safety, he's not going to be on the field as much, so he's not going to be as adverse to getting injured. And so, you're going to get a better version of Julian Blackmon. And if you want my honest opinion, I think that having Julian Blackmon or somebody like that, or Diggs or somebody like that on the roster, is going to push Nick Cross, and I think that's needed. I think everybody needs to be pushed, including guys that you pencil in as your starters. And I think, a Blackmon-Bynum secondary with Cross as like the third safety, or a Diggs-Bynum combination with Cross with those guys being the third. It doesn't matter. It's about who earns the spot to play. And I just want to see who the best players are. So you add that third guy. I don't know what Diggs or Blackmon would cost, but I wouldn't think it would break the bank. And I think, you can make some of these things work. You're obviously not going to sign all these guys. If I could sign two guys here, it would probably be Hernandez and Diggs, or Hernandez and Smith. But you're not going to be able to get all. I just want the guard spot and maybe another edge. But again, we're in so much trouble with edge because we have nobody signed next year, so that's going to be an issue. But wrapping things up, those are just a few guys that I would look at. Again, at guard, Will Hernandez, Dalton Risner, and Tristan Colon. Edge, Zadarius Smith, Dennis Gardick. Linebacker, Eric Kendricks. Safety, Quadre Diggs, Von Bell. Those are just a couple guys for each position that I would like to see them sign. Again, if I had my druthers, it would be a Will Hernandez or Tristan Colon signing for guard, and then maybe Zadarius Smith edge and Quadre Diggs for safety, but I think that's probably asking too much. I like Kendricks, but 33 is a bit long in the tooth, even though he had a great year last year for Dallas. So, but again, he might be cheap. Who knows? You might be able to stack a bunch of one-year deals with these guys. I don't think you could get Hernandez for 1 year, but you never know. So those are just some of the options that I like. Let me know in the comments, who do you like for guard, tackle? Maybe you want to tackle, edge, tight end, even though there's not much left, and linebacker, big position, and obviously safety. I think depth there is of utmost importance in our defense, and I think just having vets on this defense is going to be good because Lou loves his vets, and it's a lot easier to play fast when you can pick it up and go. So we shall see. So I asked you guys if there's anything else you wanted me to touch on, and of course you came through. You gave me 11 Colt-related questions, and then 2 final questions that I'll answer that are not really related to the Colts, but I think that you guys have just seen from following me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. So, first question, where do you think the Colts might go night one? Well, obviously, Tyler Warren is the guy. Jihad Campbell is the guy. I think if either one of those people are gone, I think they trade back. And then I think you could see them take edge, offensive line. I think they will take the best player available for the positions that they need. So it could be any position. But definitely, you know how he loves the trenches, and he loves to add picks. So I would think if you trade back, you might see him take Loveland. You might see him take one of the like Pierce or the kid from Boston College at edge. You might see him take a offensive lineman. There's just a lot of options. You know what I mean? But I think if Warren isn't there and Campbell isn't there, I really think he might trade back. Second question, I got a lot of questions about Trey Hendrickson, what's going on there. They're kind of in a standoff in Cincinnati. He wants a new deal. They want him, they want to get a deal done, but they're trying to figure out how to get that done. He's still, there's still teams talking to him. The Colts are one of them. The Colts are still interested and are keeping tabs on that situation. And so they're, until that situation plays itself out one way or the other, meaning like the Cincinnati figures out a way to pay him or they don't, because I just don't see Trey Hendrickson at this point of his career, sitting out a year. The whole Le'Veon Bell, I'm not going to play. That would be a catastrophic mistake in his career. So I think one way or the other this thing gets done. Either he goes back to Cincinnati or he gets traded. And the Colts are in on it. Philly is in on him. And a bunch of other teams are still talking to him. And, I think I'm starting to think he's going to definitely get traded. Because I think the more teams get involved, the higher the price is going to go as far as meaning the value that they are going to get in return because, teams are going to start upping each other. And at the end of the day, I think for Cincinnati, that's better because honestly, even if they do sign Trey Hendrickson, then they're very limited in what else they can do going forward. So I think he ends up. I was 50-50, then I was 80-20 that he's going back, and I heard that the Colts are kind of done, and then it's not getting done. Like there's not any money or enough money for him. Now he's talking about sitting out, which I think is a complete bluff. I don't think that's going to happen. And, he's still on the trade market, and they're still talking to other teams. So it's just a lot of moving parts. I don't know, man. It changes day to day. You guys know how this goes. There's so many variables, and so I hesitate to say one way or the other. I mean, at this moment, I feel like he's going to get traded. But everything, like a week ago, I felt like he was re-signing. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. But I do know the Colts are still involved and would love to get him to Indy, which would really help us. So hopefully that can be a possibility. Is Ballard happy with the secondary? I would say he's happy with what they've done, but they need to do more. And I think they're going to look to add, more in the safety room, another corner, whether that's via draft or free agency. I would think a safety would probably, I don't know, but no, he's not completely happy. No, because you can never have too much depth in the secondary. So I definitely think they're looking to add a third, like, safety with experience. Maybe they take one in the draft. We'll see what happens. But he is happy with that they were able to add two very good players to a very young secondary. And it's taken what I thought was a weakness of the team, or at least an average secondary, and made it above average, in my opinion. So I think he's happy where it's at, but I think he's always looking to get better. Is the fan base overlooking how good Colston Loveland is? I think they are. I think it's a closer. I think him and Warren are closer than people think. I think both of them are going to be outstanding pros, but I don't think it's just necessarily the Colts fan base. I think it's evaluators. I think it's everybody. I think they're sleeping on Loveland. I know he's not a great fit for our offense, but if you're an offensive coordinator and a guru like everybody seems to think Steichen is, you find a way to make it work with a player like Loveland. So, is he a perfect fit for what we do? No, but that's your job. Your job is to be flexible enough to find a way to put this talented player in a position to succeed. He's certainly better by far than anything on this roster. So I do think people overlook him or sleep on how good he can be, and maybe place an overvalue on his fit in this offense, and maybe thinking he's not a fit. When I think we got a great player, you find a way to make him fit and fit him into the offense, as opposed to just being kind of rigid and saying, here, this is what you're going to do. No, you find a way to make it work, and that's Steichen's job if we do happen to get Loveland, who I think is going to be a very good player in the league. Linebacker group, what are your thoughts? Well, right now, it's basically we have to add. We have to add a linebacker in the draft to compete with Carlisle. Maybe a free agent. I don't know who. I mentioned Kendricks. I don't know if he would come here, but we certainly need more depth, and I definitely think we take a young kid in the draft to compete with Carlisle and let the best man win, because we're going to be in nickel most of the time, so you're just going to have two linebackers on the field. So, but yeah, we definitely need to improve it. There needs to be more depth. I think we need to add two more linebackers, one through the draft, maybe one in free agency, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Potential cuts, restructures. Well, my potential cut's always been Sampson, but obviously he's not going to cut him. So unless maybe we get Hendrickson and then maybe he'll cut him. But restructures, I don't know. Gay, DeForest, all those guys maybe with the bigger deals, maybe you restructure them. I haven't done a deep dive on the contracts, but I'm sure there's places you can restructure things to give yourself more cap room. Teams do it all the time. What round would you select an offensive lineman? Well, that kind of depends on who's on the board. I could see them taking one in the first, the second, the third, the fourth. I could see them taking one in any of those rounds. There's a lot of good interior linemen in this draft. There's a lot of good tackles in this draft. I'm interested to see if they go tackle and make a permanent move with Matt to guard, or if they go guard and commit to Matt long term at right tackle. Because after this year, I'm pretty 99% sure Braden leaves. So, but I would say early in the first four rounds, I would say. Are we still talking to Simmons? Yes. The Colts are still talking to him and other players. Again, I don't think he liked what their offer was, and so he's holding out like most players and trying to see if he can get more money. And that's why you got to be patient a lot of times in this second wave to see, what these players want, and he wants to see if somebody will get desperate and come along and pay him more. So, yes, we're still talking to him. Nothing as far as I know is imminent, but things can change quickly. But yes, we are. We're certainly, looking at linebacker depth is very important, which leads me to this next question. Will we trade for Bobby Okereke? I would love to have Bobby, but no, I don't think we're going to give up draft capital for him. I think he's a free agent after next year anyway, so I don't think so. But, I love Bobby. He was a great Colt, and he did a lot of really good things, and he's developed into a hell of a player, but I do not think we will be trading for him. What is my long-term approach to defensive line? Well, I would say we certainly need to add edge in the draft, for sure. Hopefully get Hendrickson. If not, we're just going to have to keep drafting and see who's available next year in free agency. And then, quiet as kept, we have to figure out what we're going to do at as far as depth at defensive line, because Grover and Buck are getting older, and they're not, you're going to want to keep them fresh. So we have to get some D-line depth in this draft. We got Gallimore. That's a help, but you need to get somebody else young that you can develop. And so that's my plan, just to keep adding young talent, scouting and developing young players, and adding to that with veteran free agents or via trade, whether that's Hendrickson or next year's free agency. But yes, that's a concern because we are getting older and we only have one edge guy signed for next year. So we'll see what happens. They could bring Pay back again. Who knows what they're going to do, but certainly I'm sure they have a plan. I don't specifically know what it is, but I'm positive that it involves adding young players and at all positions on the D-line, because that's what Chris Ballard believes in. So thoughts on Steichen from game management to game plan standpoint. Let me start by saying this. I think Shane Steichen should give up the play calling. I've said it repeatedly. I think it hurt the team last year. I think it showed in the lack of leadership. And I would prefer that he allow JBC to call the games and him be the CEO. But I know it's not going to happen. These guys are egotistical maniacs, and he wants to call the games and all that. I want him to be the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. So that's the first thing. That's obviously not going to happen. I thought he was poor last year. I did not like the game plans. There was a lot of games they weren't prepared. Game like the second Houston game, coming out throwing it like 15 straight times down the field, just 3 and out. It was just horrible. And then he threw it on the, at the end of the half, got it picked off and returned for a touchdown, and it cost the Colts the game. So there's a lot of, I like that he's aggressive, but he has to be more nuanced. And when he's aggressive, he has to understand the flow of the game and when not to do things. When you're backed up in your own end zone at the end of the half and there's only 32 seconds left and you haven't done jack shit on offense all game, that's not the time to start throwing the ball all over the place. That's the time to get to the half. I think it was tied at the time in that Houston game, and just go to halftime and regroup. And in that game, he didn't do that, threw an interception, got a return for a touchdown, and then you're down. We were either down 3 and then down 10, or we were tied and down 7. I can't remember, but it was a horrible decision. I thought he was bad last year. I didn't think he helped Anthony enough. The game plans weren't great. I was underwhelmed. He was not good last year. That's as simple as I can make it. And I thought his game management was poor in a lot of sense in a lot of games, and I thought his game plans were poor in a lot of games. So he's got to get better at that. And I think getting away from the offense a little bit and letting because their offensive staff isn't bad, especially JBC. JBC is a lot. It can call games. He's done it with many different quarterbacks: Trevor Lawrence, Matt Stafford, and now he's got an athletic quarterback. Let him call the game. I think it would make everyone's job so much easier. But that's just me. I've been bitching about that since the offseason. I know a guy with Steichen's ego is not going to do it, but he should, because that would make our team better overall, in my opinion, because that would allow Steichen to coach all facets of the team and not just focus on the offense. And I've said that from day one. I believe the coach needs to be involved in every facet of the game. That's what a coach does. He's a CEO. He checks on everything, not just one side of the ball. And I feel like most of his time is spent on the offensive side of the ball. And sometimes a fresh pair of eyes and somebody that really knows the offensive personnel and knows and has called, and JBC I think's called more games than Steichen has. So I just, that's something I wish they would do, but they're not going to. Well, the Colts draft a quarterback to be the third QB. I say no. I know they brought Ewers in, which I'm not a Ewers guy. I don't want the Colts anywhere near him. I think he's going to be awful. He would not. I just don't see him being the right fit for our team. Do I think they'll draft a quarterback? Unless one falls in their lap that they really like, no. I think they do like Jason Bean as a third quarterback more than Ellinger because of his athletic ability and ability to move and throw, and I know they signed him, so I think that's going to be your third quarterback. But we shall see. You never know. We'll see what they do. What would you like to see out of AR training with Chris Hess and Josh Allen? A huge jump or a simple jump in mechanics? Well, first of all, I want him to be right next to an all-pro quarterback that knows what it takes to win and get in the playoffs, and I want him to pick his brain and learn from him. That's the first thing I want him to do. Learn how to be a pro, how to prepare like a pro, how to practice like a pro, how to develop like a pro. Being around Josh Allen could be nothing but good for Anthony Richardson, because I think they're similar in a lot of ways. As far as when they came into the league, Josh Allen struggled, AR struggled. AR's, again, super young. You guys have to remember how young he is. And I think that over time, once you get into positive habits and develop those positive habits, the confidence level will build. And when you get confident in your base mechanics and all that kind of stuff, and you start doing it day in and day out consistently, that allows you to become a consistent player, a consistent in your mechanics. So I think he can. I don't know what's going to happen, okay, but I know he's working very hard. I've heard reports in that he's doing everything they're asking of him. I think that, quite simply, I think you're going to see his mechanics improve and him improve. Is it going to be a big jump? It needs to be, but I don't know. We'll have to see. I do think you'll see a much more mechanically sound quarterback. I think you'll see I don't want to say much more accurate. I don't think he's ever going to be super accurate. Part of that's the offense. But I do think you'll see his accuracy improve maybe up near 60%. And I think it was only like 49 this year. That would be a big jump. So, I would hope and expect to see that, but he's 22 years old. I don't know. I think he's got to work, and I just think the consistency of the work, understanding what it takes to be, having an elite top 3 quarterback in front of you and seeing the way he works and seeing, and learning from him. I don't think there's any negative to that. I think that'll help him understand what he needs to do and what it takes to be not only a pro, but an elite level pro. So I think that's a great question. I don't think there's any negative that comes out of it, only positive, and I think it'll help. In the end, I think it'll help him win the quarterback competition. Um, when it comes down to it, I think he's going to be the starter opening day, barring an injury. God forbid. I do think you're going to see him take a jump. I thought you saw him take a little jump after he got benched. Granted, he was playing against some poor teams and he didn't play great in the Denver game, but I do think you're going to see improvement from him. How much remains to be seen. I think that all depends on him. How much is he willing to work? He's got all the talent. It's about putting all of those things together, getting the mechanics right, because a lot of the reason for his struggles in intermediate and short passing is mechanical. And learning how to layer his passes and when to take something off, and you learn that with reps. You just need to keep getting reps, more reps, and reps and reps, and he will continue to improve. I have not given up on him. I think that there's still something there, and as long as he works and listens to the coaches, I think there's a chance that he could take that jump. And again, this division is up for grabs. I don't think Houston is going to be as good. I don't know what Jacksonville is, and I don't, Tennessee, you just don't know what you're going to get depending on what they do at quarterback. So, again, it's not a great division. It's not the NFC East. I see the Colts being able to compete and maybe win this division if Anthony can make a jump. So we're building the talent on the roster. It's improving. We've got to continue to improve it. We need to have a really good draft. But I feel a lot better now, and you guys that listen to this show long term know how down and distraught I was after the year. I feel a lot better now than I did then going into this season. Now we got a tough schedule, and a lot of things can happen, but right now I feel like this team is going to be competitive and compete for the division. Now a lot needs to happen, and hopefully there's not a lot of injuries, and we can still add some players and have a good draft. But this division is up for grabs. I could see any one of the three teams winning it. I don't think Tennessee's ready to win yet, but I would say the other three teams certainly have a good opportunity if things fall right for them to win the division and make the playoffs. So that's a long-winded answer, but that's what I think. I think it's nothing but positive, and I'm glad he's doing it. And I think that it will help him in the long run, and it'll help him immediately this year in his quest to maintain QB1 status with the Indianapolis Colts. So those are all my Colt questions. I had two additional questions, one from an Oriole fan and one that asked me about Syracuse. So the first question is thoughts on the Orioles and how their season will play out. Well, I like their lineup. I don't like that Gunnar Henderson is already injured. I don't like that Andrew Kittredge is injured. I don't like that Grayson Rodriguez is injured. I don't like that Kyle Bradish isn't coming back to the end of the year, or Tyler Wells. I think they're going to be in competition for the third wild card spot. I think they could win it, but I picked them to go 83-79 and not make the playoffs simply because I think they're going to have too many injuries and their pitching isn't going to be good enough. You have to remember Batista's coming off a significant injury. I do think they're going to have a solid lineup, but man, they've got, their pitching staff is old. I mean, Kyle Gibson's old. They just signed him. He's going to be in the rotation. Grayson's probably going to deal with tendonitis all year, so I don't even count on him at all. You got the guy from Japan. I think he's in his mid-30s. Charlie Morton's 125. Pat Eflin, I think, is like in his 30s. So they've got a veteran staff, but there's not a top of the. Eflin's the best one. Dean Kramer's probably their youngest starter. The guy that I think is going to have a good year for them is Cade Povich. I really like what I've seen out of him. He reminds me a lot of Max Fried he was on the Braves. Now he's on the hated Yankees. But I think the Yankees in Boston will probably be better than the Orioles just because I think they have better overall rosters. I'm seeing a lot of people pick the Orioles to win the East, and I'm happy about it, but I don't see it. I just don't. I think they lost their ace, and they lost their most clutch hitter in Santander. So I hope I'm wrong, but I don't feel really great about it. They've got, They've just got a lot of issues going on already, and it's not even, the first game's tomorrow, and out the gate, I think they have a pretty tough schedule. So I do think they're going to be good. I think they have a lot of good players, good in terms of over 500 and competitive for a wild card spot, but there's a lot of things I just don't like about this team, mainly old pitching and, a bullpen that could turn out to be a nightmare. I mean, Soto in Philly was a disaster. Dominguez and Philly was kind of a disaster. You got Matt Bowman now, who's like a 4A guy. They got rid of Colomb for no reason. Perez is, you never know what you're going to get with him. Aiken actually has been better than numbers have shown. Cano's solid. I'm just worried. It's just not going to be enough. So I know that was long-winded, and Colt fans are like, "Why are you talking about this?" But people ask me questions, I try to answer them. So I hope I don't piss off too many people. Last question: how did you become a Syracuse sports fan? Okay, so back in the day, I'm old. Back in like the mid '80s, I want to say '85, they used to have Big Monday, and Syracuse was always on there. And they had a player named Pearl Washington, who's one of the greatest point guards to come out of New York City. And he was just unbelievable to watch. I mean, he was incredible. The way he could handle the ball, the way he wasn't super athletic, but he could get to the rim. And I fell in love with like their style of play, up tempo, a lot of dunking, and I just fell in love with Syracuse, and I became a Syracuse basketball fan, and they were just in the late '80s, and like they went to the Final Four, lost to Indiana. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this love that game. It's the first time I ever cried over a sporting event, but yeah. So I'm not a huge Keith Smart guy, but if we make our free throws, we win that game, and of course we didn't. That's just long time Syracuse problem. But anyway, like I just love the style of play. I mean, the dunking, the up tempo style, and they played that way for about 40 years, and then they fell off the map the last 10. Since about 2018, they've just stunk. They've made like a couple tournaments. I think they made a run in 2020 or 2021 to the Sweet 16. But anyway, so that's how I fell. I just started falling in love with their style of play, and I just started following them a lot. And those Big East games, man, those were so much fun to watch, and they were intense, and I miss all that, man, because the ACC is not the same. And then I just kind of started watching Syracuse football as and I started it was like I want to say around '90, Marvin Graves, Kadri Ismail. Then Marvin and Freeney and Kevin Mitchell, and I'm trying to remember who Paul Pasqualoni was the coach. And I just followed him ever since then, and they haven't been great since the '90s, although Fran Brown came in last year, and man, he is such a breath of fresh air. I love listening to him talk, how he relates to kids. So I'm just a huge Syracuse guy, and like one thing about me, even though I went to the University of Maryland, I'm a very loyal person, so I've always maintained my love for Syracuse, and so despite the fact that they are absolutely trash in basketball right now and have been for a while, that's my team, man. I'm always going to ride for them, just like the Colts. I'll never stop rooting for the Colts. I'll never root for any other team other than the Colts, and it's the same way with the Orioles and with Syracuse and so on and so forth. So that's my story, my origin story. I have a lot of really great stories about Syracuse, but this is just not the place to share them. So anyway, thank you guys for listening. If anything breaks this week, I will come on and talk about it. Maybe I'll come on and do some draft breakdowns. If you guys want me to break down any players in the draft, leave them in the comments. I'll do that. I will come on here and I will break down prospects for you guys. Just write them in the comment section. Please share this podcast. I'm still trying to grow it. Tell your Colt friends about it, and yeah, I really appreciate all the support. You guys are the best, and I don't know, man. I'm really starting to get excited about football again. I'm excited about the draft and excited to see what the Colts do. So I hope a lot of you guys are feeling the same. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Remember, leave your comments. Who you want to see the Colts go after in free agency, and who do you want me to break down prospect wise? Next podcast. And until then, thank you so much for listening. Hope everybody has a great hump day. Wednesday it is. And I will talk to you guys soon here on Culture Uncut.